Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Coaching Uncovered podcast. My name is Chris Berry, and I am going to be your host for today. Joining us, we have Teilo Berquier. Teilo, how are you doing today?
I am doing great.
Yeah,
Really happy to be here. Thanks, man.
exactly. Happy Easter, and excited to chat about some coaching business stuff. So, before we dive into kind of specifics of your business, could you just give everyone that's listening or watching kind of an explanation of what you do?
Yeah, for sure. So the quickest way is I'm a transformational coach. And so my primary business is one-on-one coaching to high performers, and I classify them into really overthinkers
Mm,
is the core group that I strike. And so, 33 to 55 folks who've got some level of success, but their life is a 6 to a 7 out of 10. And everything they're doing at the moment isn't getting them to a 10 out of 10. And so
mm,
that's who I work with.
yeah. And what made you get into this space in the beginning?
Because I was one of them,
Mm,
and everything I was doing wasn't working for me. So I went on a bit of a quest, a hero's journey
yeah.
for 5 or 6 years and really completely dismantled my life. And took a sabbatical. I've taken multiple sabbaticals, but I took a very long sabbatical and did the work, into the desert, into the mountains, inwards, outwards. And out of all of that, I realized that even though I've been an executive and a founder and built businesses and sold them and been a manager, et cetera, my real passion was people. And the thing that I got most excited by was seeing that seed of potential that every individual has and figuring out how to unlock that and then seeing it go out into the world. And I just went back through my catalog of like all the people who are my favorite employees or business partners or clients in the past when I was consulting. And that's the thing that really lit me up. And I was like, let's build a business about it. And to do that, I had to go through my own journey to be able to claim that and own it because I had some resistance to it, as a lot of people do when they try to get into their zone of genius.
Yeah.
Whether it's like genius or not, I don't know, but I get pretty good results, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Well, everyone has their lane of genius and everything, the thing that they focus on, all of that. So essentially, it's funny how it always works. It's oftentimes the person that we're most qualified to serve is the person that we used to be, and that sounds like obviously exactly you of kind of you going through this journey and then all of that, and then helping other people with it. Um, one thing I am curious about always asking is obviously inside of a business, there's ups. There's downs, there's highlights, there's lowlights, there's challenges, all of it. If you were to kind of just share some of the biggest highlights, let's say, and then some of the biggest challenges that you've faced inside of your business, what would you say those have been?
Yeah, sure. And I'm still early days. So this has only been a full-time gig for me for 14 months now.
Mm,
So I consider that very, very early in terms of what I'm doing. And the biggest highlight is when I see my clients bloom.
mm,
That's the aha moments they get, or when they get over a block, or they take that step that they never realized they wanted or were capable of doing, and that's just joy that just opens me up. And so that's the thing that I love about it. And the bit that's really challenging is it's early days, and like many coaches, I imagine I'm not a marketer. I've run marketing teams before. I've done brand type work in the past. I actually ran a branding agency back in the day. And doing it for myself is very, very different. And doing it in this age and this market is very, very different. And so that for me is the biggest challenge in terms of who do I want to become? Do I want to become the Instagram guy? Do I become the LinkedIn guy? Do I start building courseware, which I am doing? Do I write a book, which I am doing? Because I'm passionate about those and I want to leverage what I do. My goal is to help 1 million people find personal freedom, right? And so at the rate of doing it now, I'm going to be here for 100 years. So I need to leverage that. And so how do I do that? And while staying in my belief that everything can be easy, I can do everything in flow. And so far, that's worked really, really well. But then how do I 10x and then 100x my impact on the world? And that's the challenge I've got at the moment. And so I'm doing that by experimentation and reaching out to folks and doing it. But it's difficult because I'm not an ex-celebrity or an ex-actor or an individual marketer. And so I'm learning how to go out. And that brings up a whole bunch of inner work that, how do I shine with the things that I do when I'm not, the ex-bodybuilder, when I look at other coaches and just go, wow, they're all really, really fit and they're in their mid-20s. Man, that's got an aspirational life. And I don't want to show off the car I drive and my vacations and my amazing partner and all sorts of stuff. So I don't want to advertise that as what I do. So how do you get to the benefit of it? And how do you find the folks who are in that situation? And so that's the biggest challenge. The actual work itself, I've done so much of it myself. I find that really challenging, but easy, I guess. The clients just really respond to the work that I do. So that isn't the challenge right now. The challenge right now is how do I scale my impact? Long answer.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. And I think that's a very common challenge, let's say, of many of the coaches that come on the podcast, many of the coaches that I just come across in general. It's like I'm an expert at what I do, but I'm not necessarily an expert at marketing or building a funnel or running ads or doing this, and also having it be, as you mentioned, of in alignment with you. I'm not interested in just, oh, let me flash around a Lamborghini or this or that, it's how do I make sure it's in alignment there? So it's a very common thing. So one thing I am curious though, because this is such a common, we'll say roadblock challenge that people kind of come across, what are you currently doing for marketing then as of right now?
Yeah, sure. So I've been really, I guess, blessed is the right way of putting it, in terms of having some amazing referral sources. And so
Mm,
I have a long network of people in tech and entrepreneurship in the US and Australia. And so just reaching out to folks just brings leads in, right? Which is great, right?
mm,
And then I work with a crew who do amazing work with YouTube creators,
mm,
and we're now developing joint products together. And so I get referrals out of that, which is fantastic. And that's a real market where people are struggling. Like burnout there is absolutely huge, and figuring out how to transform from being a creator into an entrepreneur or a CEO is really, really difficult. So that's a really, really interesting niche, and I love it because they're the loveliest people in the world in terms of, because they've found something they're passionate about. They've already got their zone of genius. Now they need to figure out how to build a lifestyle around it. And then the third one is my partner was actually a transformational coach, and she runs a business and she does courseware only. She doesn't do one-on-one coaching. And so she brings a bunch of leads to me as well, which is
like the next
fantastic.
level coaching.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that's that's what I do primarily, is work on providing really great value. So I get referrals out of my clients and referral out of these networks. And I'm looking at other hubs that I can work and lodge myself into and help out. And I feel like I'm a little bit different. Well, every coach is different, right? They're all unique. But I have a dual entrepreneurship slash management, executive coaching, performance coaching angle from my past, as well as the deep personal work I do, which I'd love to talk about. But those two angles, I think, are kind of unique. And then in terms of going forward, I've just experimented with LinkedIn direct outreach. And so that's a journey. And so, getting 500 rejections a week is interesting. And then, but it's great fuel, right? It's great fuel to work out. What is it? And how do I test in real time? I am the A/B split test. And
Mm,
then I'm doing a little of Insta, but I haven't found any joy in that yet. And I only want to do things that bring me joy. And I think there's a way of doing it. And that's primarily it. I'm working on a course at the moment to bring the low level introductory work that I do and be able to scale that. And I'm working on a book. I'm actually working on two. One's fiction, but the non-fiction book is around about the core problem I'm trying to solve. Because I believe that so much of the knowledge I've got, if I can get it out to folks, they'll benefit from it. And if that's the win, that's the win. But if it then leads into additional coaching work or people flying to the courses, that's great as well.
mm.
But I'm still finding my feet in terms of what's my messaging. And so that's where I'm at the moment.
I'm curious as a whole because you've obviously talked about a couple of different things and kind of what it looks like. You're trying a bunch of stuff. You talked about the LinkedIn stuff, kind of like a newer thing, but you talked about kind of the core three of leveraging kind of people in your network to give referrals,
Yeah.
obviously word of mouth referrals from existing clients, and you also talked about your partner that has that. The partner makes sense, right? She's doing the coursework, kind of next steps, right?
Yeah.
You have obviously referrals of like clients that you've worked with. A lot of people are very skeptical though of reaching out to their network, right? Like right when they first get started, they're like, oh, I don't want to reach out to them, ask for help or this or that. Like, what do you do to reach out to your network to make it to where it doesn't feel icky and all of that, but then obviously it's bringing you clients? Like, what do you typically do?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I had resistance around it as well because when I started out, I was new to coaching, and I had an identity tied up in terms of being a tech guy and an executive. And
Hmm.
so am I going to reach out to my existing network and suddenly change all of that? And so I had a lot of resistance and challenge around it. And so I just started reaching out to individuals who I knew were, so I just started slowly because I needed to prove to myself and feel safe with it. Right.
Yeah.
And so I reached out to a bunch of folks and then I got some little wins out of that. And then I set up a newsletter just to a small subsect of my network that I knew I felt safe with. Right. So there's a
Hmm.
little part of me that was like, want to hide in the corner. It was
Hmm.
okay. And I could, love on it. And so then I did that newsletter. And then out of that, I started getting responses out of that and started getting these really interesting conversations. And I really had no expectation around it. It's just, let me tell people what I'm doing. Let me tell them about the sort of wins that I'm getting. And I was really surprised by the response to that because I thought no one's going to care. And it's
Hmm.
interesting because it's like you're sending this voice out into the void, you're getting no feedback at all because
Yeah.
no one's even going to rate your newsletter, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, people will just be emailing or DMing me and just say, "Hey, I saw you're doing all this stuff now. I'd love to know more." And
Hmm.
that's just magic, and that's just, and then lead into a conversation. And
Hmm.
then was the challenge of, do I go in hard in terms of, do I leap in and straight away go into their problems they want to solve, all this stuff, or do I go in soft? And I prefer a softer approach in terms of, I want to get to the point of the conversation where they ask me whether I can help them,
Hmm.
which may be costing me sales. I don't know. But I think that's a far safer way of moving for me at this point in the business. And ultimately, that's where I want to be. I want people to just be going, "Hey, Teilo, I'd like to work with you because I see these things that you do. You're different in terms of the way you approach things. Can I have some of that?"
Hmm.
That's the stance I want to have. So I want to begin with that stance rather than coming from a forcing, desperation, pain point marketing perspective of, let me squeeze you a little bit and make you feel painful here and let me get you while you're emotionally in a situation to get you across the line. That said, I still don't let people, if they do want to work with me, I then close straight away and then move straight away in terms of, let's get payments sorted, let's book the next appointment in, let me get me a welcome pack to you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not shying away from the sale, but it's getting people to the point of desire rather than anything else. And so I still haven't tapped my full network. Right? And so, my mailing list is very, very small. That's something I like to do and expand on, but I do have a lot of writing going on at the moment. As I want to launch this newsletter to a larger audience or not? And I'm in two minds about it. Content creation, from what I've seen with my YouTube clients, it's a beast, an absolute beast. And do I want to sign up for that if I can't get joy out of it? And at the
Hmm.
moment, I'm loving what I do. So how do I navigate that?
Yeah. Well, I think a major point that you talked about in general is that you started reaching out to your network and everything. And eventually you talked about how people you just start having conversations and then they see you and they say, oh, I'd love to learn more. But really what it all came down to is you putting yourself in front of them first because they never would have said, I would have wanted to learn more unless they knew that you're even doing something. And so on that initial one, you talked about you're just reaching out to people. What are you just saying? Like, hey, how you been? What's new? Hey, here's what I'm up to. Or are you like, I'm doing like, is that like your initial message? Or is like, hey, I'm doing this. I thought of you. Do you want to get involved? Do you know anyone? Like, what approach are you
Yeah.
taking
The,
with people?
the first reach out I did was actually, I was debating whether to go, I've been off the radar, because I went into the journey, did the Odyssey, right?
Yeah.
And I debated about whether to just go, hey, you haven't seen me in a while, it's been a long time, et cetera, et cetera. And I just went, no, that's not actually valid. That's not required right now. Everyone moves so quickly in this day and age, and everyone's got such a small attention span. They aren't even aware they've disappeared or
Mm,
had this huge change or blah, 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 or
yeah.
all the things. And so I just went straight back in and just went, hey, this is what I'm doing. Thought of you, would love to catch up. That's it. And it
Mm.
was very, kind of that kind of nature. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that seemed to work. And one thing that I'm still trying to internalize is I'm the product. Even when I put this course together, the reason I think people are coming to me is because of me. They trust me for whatever reason. um, and then the outcomes are great, but it's about me. And that has been a blessing, because if I just get up and talk to people, or I'm on stage, or I'm doing a workshop or whatever, or I just meet people at a function, I win clients out of it because they want to work with me.
Yeah.
And I figured out what that is, right? It's not the hair, because it works when I've got short hair as well. And so what is it, right? And that makes it really hard for my marketing messages, in terms
Mm.
of how I distill that down to a message that is separate from me. And so I'm coming to realize that somehow I need to figure out what this package is and
Mm.
what it is that I do in interaction, and then be able to bring that and broaden that out.
Yeah.
And so that outreach to my network is just reminding them of my personality and who I am. And that's all I need. And then in the context of who I am, these are the things that I now do. Can you think of anyone in
Yeah.
your network that may need something like this? And then they go, yeah, how about me?
True.
So that works pretty well. It works terribly for cold outreach, obviously.
Because you don't have the established relationship with
Yeah,
people.
there's no trust relationship there. They don't know who I am. They have nothing there. And so now my strategy is moving with the cold outreach. Well, initially was like, how can I move quickly to a discovery call or a strategy call or whatever you want to call it, which I don't know whether that really works anyway. Now it's a matter of, let's just go slow burn. And this is just an opportunity to start building a trust relationship. And how can I get folks into, the classic 5, 7, or 9 contact points? And
Mm.
so, I've never done a lead magnet before. So I'm looking at how can I provide some really great value to folks in something that I can give them up front, and just go, here's something that works for overachievers like you in your industry.
Yeah.
Take 2 minutes. You can use it every day, right? If you like it, here's more, et cetera, et cetera. And then, slowly build up that trust relationship by offering value up front rather than what's in it for me, which is obvious, but it's really easy to slip into the, well, I'm here to win sales. I'm here to get people to the core. What do my metrics look like? I'm an ex-Amazonian, and, the numbers mean everything.
Mm.
And you can get very, very focused on that, which
Mm.
takes away from the heart of the business and takes away from what I think is the core of why people buy from me.
Well, it's a mix of having a bit of both. It's, yes, of course, the numbers can help in regards to giving clarity, understanding where to go and everything. But the whole reason why we did this is to help people, to help uplift, to coach. And those are just things, as you kind of said, like it comes from the heart. So I
Yeah.
agree
And
with
then
you.
how to express that in like a whatever platform or whatever marketing material, etc., without it seeming like vapid coach language.
Yeah.
And that's the trouble, because you start talking about, love and power and releasing potential and etc. And all this language, you just go, well, am I just like all the other folks who are imitating Big Tony and all that sort of stuff? How do you find language that's unique? And that's one of the real things that I think being the person, selling the person cuts through a little bit, is the challenge of the folks who I really get the best wins out of, kind of bait and switch, in terms of, I'm going to help you with all the things that your overthinking mind wants. So you come in to get those solutions like, well, I want more money, or I want, a raise, or I want da, 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 da. But the reality is, let's get you better connected with your body. Let's get you better connected with your emotional being. Let's give you the capacity to handle discomfort. And once you've got that core, that you can then go move into everything else. But if I sold that up front and said, I'm going to make it really great for you to be able to hold emotions. And by the way, your challenges you experience in your life are all about you avoiding emotion, they're not going to believe me, generally.
Correct.
And so there has to be this kind of dual layer to the conversation,
Mhm.
which I'm still trying to figure out how to do that. Right?
Yeah.
Because transformational coaching, very few people are sitting there going, you know what, I need to transform my personality. It's not people sit around, they just go, my life is, and people are very good, particularly overthinkers, are very, very good at, my life is great. I've got the
Mm-hmm.
car, I've got the house, I've got, the stocks are doing well, not now, but in general, my stocks are doing great. I've got this career track, I've got a 10-year plan into what I want to get, I want to hit VP, or I've got my business and we're going to expand to 3 locations by blah, or whatever it is, right? And so they have all these things, and that feels like satisfaction in your life. And it can be if it's done in alignment with who you are and your real desires. But to try and break through that armor they've developed around it, that can be really, really challenging. And I'm really curious, for me, how I figure that out over the next couple of years.
Yeah. Well, it's people, it's the awareness of people. They aren't aware that they need to do this, this, and this to get to here, you know? And so ultimately for them, it's just like, oh no, I want to get to here, you know? And the way I always see it, I've seen it is we have to sell people on what they want, but give them what they need to get what they want. And of course, yeah, they want certain aspects of it, but as you mentioned, there's other parts that we need to make sure that they go ahead and do because they don't have the insight to see, okay, we got to just take 1, 2, and 3 to get to number 4. And they think they just need 2 and 3, but then oh no, we need to also make sure we get a number 1 as well, as an
Yeah.
example.
Yeah.
So,
And it's really funny because there's a couple of questions which kind of cuts through really quickly. And
mm,
one of them is, what time would you like to go to bed at night?
mm,
And then how often do you hit that?
mm,
It's insane the number of people who are very, very successful in every other aspect of their life, and they think they're doing great, and they rate their life at 8 out of 10 or whatever it is, and they just go, I never hit it. I'd like to go to bed at 10 or 9 or whatever it is. And go, so how much command do you think you have over your life if you can't even go to bed on time?
sure.
It's just fascinating. I find it just such a fascinating little metric, because being able to solve that uncovers so much of the rest of their life in terms of how they try and use control rather than command in terms of everything they do. And so that's one way to kind of cut through a little bit. And you've got to stir some emotion up in folks to get them to move, right?
True. Well, one thing.
The other really interesting, I collect data on everything. So people do like a baseline assessment when they come in. And so we collect where they think they're at on a whole bunch of dimensions of their life and their business, a separate one for each. And then we check in every 3 months on how they're going. And so, because I want to see stats.
Mhm.
Not love the stats, obviously, right?
Yeah.
But the thing that I find fascinating is that people's understanding what a 10 out of 10 for their life, mastery, thriving, happiness, etc., 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 completely shifts. So sometimes you get folks who say, yeah, I'm a 7 out of 10. And then we do the work, and then 3 months later they say, well, actually, I'm a 5 out of 10. And I go, well, that's a really interesting conversation. Like the data says you're getting worse. And I say, no, no, no. It's improved by like 80% or whatever it is. But my understanding of 10 out of 10 has shifted completely.
Hmm.
And I love that. I love it, in terms of people's worlds opening up
Yeah,
of how much is possible to them.
it's true. I agree. One last thing I do want to make sure, because I know only have a couple more minutes as we begin. There's 2 more questions I would like to go ahead and ask you. The first one is something that you mentioned before about your deep personal work, right? And kind of that journey and everything and what that looks like. Because you talked about kind of the 2 paths and this side of it too. What does that look like, both for you and then also clients you work with?
Yeah, this could go on for, we could talk for hours here. So
Yeah.
I started doing personal work like all the way back. I've always been interested in how to enhance my performance. I was into samurai and the Stoics as a kid and a teenager, and so how do I use will to make everything happen? And so it was all about willpower. And then then I became an entrepreneur in my 20s and 30s and a professional, and then it was all about kind of, and this is pre growth hacking, but it was very much growth hacking in terms of how can I do these performance enhancing activities to get myself better, and that then led me into meditation as a performance hack, right?
Mhm.
Um, and then tried therapy, but I could manipulate my therapist and just talk around them. So we never actually got into anything really serious. And it took a break a complete break for me. So I was in an unhappy marriage. There was a whole bunch of things happening. I was suffering from depression, and everything kind of ended for me in terms of
Mm.
all the things that I thought I'd been dreaming for and creating and all that sort of stuff. And it was a slow decline, and then it kind of exploded. And that was staring into the abyss for a while. And then I had to rebuild from there. And so so I was my classic client. I knew all the answers. This is the way the world works. This is all the structure of it. I'm in control will get me where I want to go, and being smart will get me where I want to go. And so I was still holding on to that. But by having such a complete break of everything, and this is only like 8 years ago, right? Let me just go, well, what if I'm wrong?
Mm.
Let me let go of that a bit. So then I started going to therapy, started taking it seriously, saw 4 different therapists, tried different modalities, tried, ketamine treatment, tried, psychedelics, then started doing various types of meditation, disappearing for silent meditation retreats, exploring, is my atheist science-backed worldview the right view? Are there other things? Could I be open to that? Going internal, doing a lot of trauma related work. I don't have any big T trauma, but a lot of little T trauma, and connecting with my body, connecting with my breath. And everyone talk about nervous system. And, I'm a big fan of that. Then I started doing a bunch of reprogramming work through hypnosis. Then eventually moved through EMDR, started doing IFS in terms of therapy modalities, then deep brain reorienting, and some Alexander technique, which is a really interesting technique as well. Feldenkrais is in there, experimenting with, did some BJJ for a while, did some other, combat sports, did some bunch of body work, rolfing, some other activities there. And so I started addressing the entire body and mind as a package. And then it did a bunch of men's work. So disappeared into the desert, disappeared into the mountains, with groups of 50 men. And that was incredible. And dealt with a whole bunch of relationship issues with men, et cetera, et cetera. And so uncovered all of that. And then rebuilt myself in a calmer kind of way from that. And now the work that I do with my clients, I've taken, and a lot of it didn't work and wasn't appropriate for me. When I began, I was doing Wim Hof and some types of meditation. And because of the way my body was, it actually was increasing my anxiety rather than reducing. And so not every modality is right for everyone at every point in time. And so it's finding which ones are right. And so now the core of my practice is I kind of work on 3 levels with folks. So I work on the intellectual mind. So we have to satisfy the intellectual mind. So I talk about the frameworks, I talk about, the brain chemistry of how it all works, all the particular details of how it works. Then there's kind of the emotional body, which ties in a little bit with the nervous system. Yeah. And then there's the deep brain, which is, the deep psyche. Lots of people put shadow on it, or, Jungian type archetype work, whatever it is, and you can use whatever language you like. It doesn't matter. These things are there. And so I've found tools that really work with it. So my coaching now is a combination of kind of performance coaching, right? Because we want to move. I want to move quickly. I'm all about, you could get the same result here by doing 40 years of meditating, probably, maybe, right? What if we accelerate it using all the tools that are 3,000 years old, in terms of breath work and so like that, as well as the latest developments in neuroscience? And so deep brain orienting with Alexander techniques gets into the deep brain stem. And so I do work with that. I'm not a therapist, but I've trained in some of these techniques. And so I use them in sessions. So sometimes a session is, we talk through problems, do traditional coaching in terms of getting them through to aha moments and reviewing, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one part of it. The next part is we do emotional processing. And so we really get into the triggers that come up in their life and the emotional blocks they've got and unpack them. And they use a combination of internal family systems, which I believe is one of the most powerful modalities on the planet, and anyone can do it. I use it for myself all the time. Deep brain orienting, and then some other little bits and pieces attached to the science of that. So that's one part of it. The second part of it is then accountability. And so behavior change is the hardest thing for people to do, and they rely on their willpower to do that. And so I do daily check-ins with all of my clients just by text.
Yep.
And it gives them the support and the structure so they're not alone, so they can make the behavior shifts that then reinforce all the work that we're doing. Because if you only make the change in one area, like in performance, or you do therapy, or you just do habit change, or whatever it is, you just do these individual parts, you're not attacking the entire system. A lot of my clients also recommend to go get a therapist, do body work, and engage in a range of other activities depending on where they're at. And so that's kind of the work that I do. And, it's simple. Like, let's meet every week or every fortnight or every month. Daily check-ins, but it's also highly, highly challenging in terms
Mm-hmm.
of getting people to the edge of their safety and being comfortable with that, then be able to take the risks and move forward with it. And
Mm-hmm.
it just opens for itself. So it's
Yeah.
amazing. Anyway, you can tell I love it. I'm passionate about it, right? And I do it myself, so I don't do anything that I haven't done. And some of it I'm not yet a master of. But as long as I'm one step ahead of everyone else, and as long as I'm really, really cautious about what my lane is, I'm not a therapist. If someone has deep, significant trauma, then there's people who are very, very skilled at that.
Hmm.
Right? And they can work with that. And if people really don't want to delve into it, and they're too afraid of unpacking the box of who they are, and they just want to target pure performance, it's like, no, I know who I am. This is what I'm going to be. Blah blah blah. Alex Hormozi is my god. I just want to go go go. They're not a fit for me.
Hmm.
Right? I'm about creating a life of freedom. So that's inner freedom first, and then from the inner freedom, it all comes out from there.
Yeah. Makes sense. Well, the beautiful part behind it, you've gone through all of these different stages, all these different modalities. So now you have a much stronger understanding of it. It's not like there's a one size fits all. Everyone needs to do this. It's like, no, no, hold on. Like every person, as you mentioned, based on you and who you are, has a different modality, which is obviously important to go ahead and best be able to help all these different people depending on where they're at, essentially.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. And that's the challenge for me in terms of marketing and growing the business is a lot of it is intuitively led, or that there's a lot of resources here that I use, and
Yeah.
particularly on the emotional clearing, I'm starting to use tools in terms of like audio recordings and stuff like that,
Mm.
to be able to help people do it whenever they want. So it's DIY.
Yeah.
Remove myself from 80% of the practice,
Yeah.
which that's my journey over the next couple of years of figuring out how to do that. But not having here's the secret 1, 2, 3 solution to all of your problems. Let's go. I'd love to have that. That'd be really easy to sell, right? Yeah.
It is true. It's true. Well, this has been awesome. I'm sure we could talk for hours and hours more and everything. I'm sure we'll have many conversations in the future. For anybody who really resonated with you, your message, or maybe even just wants to work with you from a coaching perspective or whatever that looks like, what's the best way for them to get in communication with you?
Yeah. So Instagram is probably the quickest place, and it's the Teilo. So Heteilo.
Amazing. Awesome. Well, Tilo, great having you. I appreciate it. And we will, I'm sure, be in touch and talk more soon.
Thank you, man. Pleasure being
Awesome.
here.
Okay.
Peace.
Okay. Have a good one. If you guys like this video, make sure to go ahead and like and subscribe. And if you'd also like to watch another episode to see how you can continue to grow your coaching business, go ahead and click right here.